Extra time.
Hello and welcome back to the Extra Time podcast. It's me, Patrick Van Strassen, your host, and this week I'm joined by the original podcast crew. It's Chris Hamill. Hello, Chris.
What up?
And Joe Tomlinson. Hello, Joe.
Hello.
How are you guys both doing after a very dramatic end to the Premier League season?
Mate,
Wow.
I am absolutely stoked the season is over. I'm done being emotionally invested in football. I've got stats coming out of my arsehole. I want to do nothing but let my brain melt into a pool of goo.
Okay.
Well-
Is that positive? Joe, you must be absolutely delighted after Man United wrapped up Champions League on the final day.
Absolutely buzzing. You know, didn't make it pretty, but nevertheless, to claw back such a big deficit from Christmas is a fantastic result for Solskjaer. Yesterday, I was not caring about a performance. I couldn't give a f- whether or not things went well on the field as long as we got the result, and that's all that we did because we didn't look good. We looked tired, but we got the 3 points and we're in the Champions League, back to where we need to be.
I've got to say,
Yeah, well,
PVS, this has all the trappings of a great podcast, like a bit of a lack of preparation and multiple swear words in the first 30 seconds. So I'm buzzing for this one.
Well, we hope that this one's going to be a good one because today we're going to talk about the biggest teams from the Premier League season, the top 6 plus Leicester, and their best and worst players of the season. Now, I actually think, while we tend to agree broadly on things, there might be some contentious shouts in here. So let's start off, shall we, with the champions. Liverpool obviously ending that 30-year barren run with a spectacular championship win. Didn't quite break the record for winning margin, I guess we're calling it, at the top of the table. But still, an absolutely phenomenal performance. 99 points and deserved winners. Joe, who for you is Liverpool's player of the season?
Oh, this is so tough. Isn't it? What I will say is it's not Jordan Henderson. I think Jordan Henderson's been a splendid addition in that midfield and has obviously contributed a lot off the field. And he's very, very good in terms of captaincy and leadership. He drives the team forward. Do I think he's the best individual player? No. And I think most people would openly agree with that. I was really torn with this one between Mane and Virgil van Dijk. I wanted to say Trent, but then I think Trent's a better shout for sort of young player. I think he has had a great season. But without Virgil van Dijk, I don't think Liverpool would be where they are right now. I think he brings everything Liverpool need at the back in a single person. I think you could have any partner alongside him and they'd look excellent. I think he helps Robertson massively and he helps Trent massively. He distributes from deep for fun, which also helps them with a few midfield issues they've potentially got in terms of distribution into the front line. I just think he's their best player. Do I think he's had the best season? I think it's between him and Mane. But I'm going to say Virgil van Dijk because I think he's Liverpool's best player.
Interesting. Chris, do you differ on this at all?
Yeah, actually, I do pretty wildly. I think it's Mo Salah. I mean, 29 goals and assists in 33 starts. The most shots per 90 in the league. It is a shame about that 20-goal benchmark. He was on, wasn't he, for being one of only 3 players in Liverpool's history to hit 20 goals in 3 consecutive seasons, but couldn't quite find it at the end. And I think that might be weighing on his mind somewhat because there were some uncharacteristically poor misses at the end of the season. Sadio Mane is the biggest bastard to play against at Liverpool. Like, he is the hardest man to mark. I think he is, in terms of an individual battle, I would probably rather mark Salah, but I still think output-wise, he clinches it. And if Van Dijk had got to the club first, this is what I find quite curious about the Van Dijk versus everyone else for who is the most important player conundrum. If Van Dijk had got to the club first and Mo Salah came second, I think we'd be heralding Mo Salah as the missing piece, right? It just so happens that Virgil van Dijk came in after Mo Salah and therefore gets a lot of credit for kind of completing the side. I think Virgil van Dijk is in my top 3. I don't need to go into details as to why. He's just awesome, isn't he? But Joe Gomez is also very, very good. So I've gone Mo Salah. I think they're more reliant on him than any other player in that in that team.
You think they're more reliant on him than Van Dijk? If they took Van Dijk out of the team, they took Salah out of the team, which one do you think would suffer more? I think 100% take Van Dijk out, they suffer more.
I actually think that like elite attackers win you more titles than elite defenders. Like I don't know. I mean, Van Dijk is so good that it's like quite difficult to say, but Salah is the engine of that attack. He is.
But
and Mane gets more space because of Salah.
I do agree that he definitely drives them forward, and he's obviously an amazing goal scorer. But I think if you took it, if I'm just talking about individuals being taken out of this team, the detriment that they would suffer from Virgil van Dijk at the back, I think is unheralded.
But I think that's there's some nuance in that question, isn't there? Like they would win less points without Salah. Like he there is no question about that. Like he would win them more points than Van Dijk. Van Dijk's absence would lose them points, I guess, is my rationale. But Van Dijk obviously has made a seismic change. I'm not disputing that. But I just think Mo Salah clinches it for me. But it's a good hypothetical.
It's close.
That's the I think we'll come back to your way of looking at it when we get onto Man United, I think. But Mo Salah, I do think it's not spoken about enough. Like, I was thinking the other day, everyone will pretty much agree that there are no centre-backs in the league better than Virgil van Dijk. But how many forwards are there in the league who are better than Mo Salah? Because I actually don't think there's one. I truly think he's the best forward in the league. He's not my favourite.
I think
I prefer watching Mane. I prefer Rashford. I actually prefer Pulisic. But I think Salah might actually be the best forward.
But what I'll say is the disparity between Salah and 4 other players is incredibly minimal. The disparity between Virgil van Dijk and any other defender in the league is monumental.
So you don't.
I think Laporte at his best is not a million miles away. He's not as good, but he's not like measurably worse.
I thought you meant disparity in the actual side there, in the club side, as in like he's obviously miles better than Firmino.
Yeah, no, I mean like in terms of other players in the league.
Yeah,
across the league. Like he's obviously one of probably the top 5 attackers in the league. But I think the drop off from so maybe Laporte aside, the drop off from Virgil van Dijk and Laporte to anybody else is monumental.
Who do you think you could swap Salah for in the league without seeing a significant drop in performance?
Well, the trouble is there's not an awful lot of right wingers, I suppose. But I think you could swap him for Aubameyang fairly comfortably and see a similar output in terms of goals. I think Mane and Aubameyang with Firmino dropped in behind him. I think you see he'd probably score 18 goals in that team.
Yeah, but I don't think he'd create as much, and I don't think I know what you're saying. Like it's difficult to say because of system and stuff, but I think you've both presented really good cases. My pick was actually Trent Alexander-Arnold, purely because I think if you look at his value over, like, if you gave Liverpool, you know, like if you could get a perfectly average centre back to replace Van Dijk or a perfectly average forward to replace Salah, in a way, I think that Trent Alexander-Arnold is further above average than those guys because of the way that Liverpool have built around him. Yeah. Like, Liverpool's team ran through Alexander-Arnold this season more than any other player. Like, he got 17 goal involvements from right back, which is absolutely staggering. Like, he led the league in progressive passes. He was 4th in the league for passes into the penalty area. The only 3 guys ahead of him were David Silva, Kevin De Bruyne, and Mahrez. But really, to me, what showed how important he was that quite often when they needed a key goal, he got it. When they needed someone to create something out of nothing, he got it. And I know what you're saying about, young player of the season is there, and as a result, it's an easier decision to make. But I truly think that he was probably the outstanding player to me in the league this season. I just looked at him and thought, I've never seen a right back be the most important player on a team before. I mean, it's really quite staggering.
Yeah, it's tough for Liverpool, isn't it? It's very, very tough to pick a best player in that team.
Well, can we find any place to meet in the middle here?
Yeah, Sadio Mane.
We can all just agree with our second choice and go for Mane.
So I'm interested as to know. I think maybe we can decide this by sort of all reeling off our top 3 then, and we just revert to the mean, right? So mine would go Salah, Van Dijk, and then probably Mane. Like, I don't think Trent would make my top 3, make my top 5, but that would be my top 3. What about you, Pat or Joe?
I think mine would go Van Dijk, Mane, Trent.
Salah not even in your top 3. Bloody hell.
I'd probably go Trent, Salah, Van Dijk.
Oh, it's too close to kill, isn't it?
But Mane's so close then
I know.
to getting in. I mean, oh God.
Come on, Pat, you're hosting this thing, mate. You can make
All
decisions.
right, I am going to make an executive decision. And I have decided that we are going to go for Van Dijk.
Yeah,
Why
good
not?
decision. Good
Let's
decision.
put Van Dijk in.
Good decision.
Moving on to the worst, I'm going to throw a name out at you. Well, actually, firstly, I think it's worth pointing out that Firmino, as good as he's been, has massively underperformed and could not finish a thing this season. He got 9 goals in the league, which is quite alarming, really. And if they hadn't won the title, I think we'd have been hearing a lot of conversations about whether Firmino was good enough this season. But I'm going to say Divock Origi to you guys.
He's not been as bad as Xherdan Shaqiri, man. It's not been as bad as Xherdan Shaqiri.
But can you include Shaqiri? He's played about 100 minutes.
Yeah, but that's because he's bad.
But there's a bunch of players that have barely got enough minutes to register as functioning members of this side, right? Are we counting them? Because if we are, you're unequivocally correct.
Like Xherdan Shaqiri, he warrants getting either a one appearance in the Carling Cup, FA Cup, Champions League, or Club World Cup. He hasn't featured once in any of them. That he must be so bad. He must be so bad.
But I think you have to have a little bit more time on the pitch to get this amount of criticism, to be labelled the worst player of the season. And the thing is about Origi, the reason I said Origi is because last summer there were lots of Liverpool fans who were saying, what an incredible super sub, because of the goal against Barcelona, because of the Champions League final. This year he's had 700 minutes. He's got 5 goal involvements in that time, but I mean, James Milner's got like 4 goal involvements in like 900 minutes, and Naby Keita's got 5 in 800 minutes. So in a way, I think that's not that impressive. And he gets dispossessed more than anyone else in the squad. When I watch him, he ruins the attack. That is what he does.
Did you see his goal on the weekend, mate? It's an absolute perler.
He's capable of great goals because he's not like a totally useless player, but I think he's in the right kind of Goldilocks zone of having played enough for Liverpool and having been bad enough to be their worst player.
Liverpool are the hardest team to pick for the worst player
sure.
because everybody's been consistent.
For sure,
Everybody's been consistently good or better.
And the reason I wouldn't put Divock Origi down as worst player is because they need someone who is markedly worse than the front 3 on the bench. So they're happy, being that bit part player. And I think Origi is fine as a squad addition. If he was like agitating for minutes or getting above his station, I'd be like, well, you've clearly lost all perception of what your role in this team is, and then maybe I'd agree with you. But like, as such, I've gone Dejan Lovren, just fewer than 800 minutes, but enough minutes to kind of establish that it could have been any other centre back eating up those minutes, and it probably wouldn't have made a difference. Although they have got £11 million from him for him.
Yeah, I thought he's been okay when
for
he's
his
played
sale to Zenit. Yeah, he was fine. He was fine. But as you say, it's really slim pickings at the bottom. He's in that category of like 500 to 1,000 minutes, and I just thought if they were given to someone else, I don't think it would have altered the results. 185 appearances for the club though. Klopp describing him as a legend. Mo Salah saying "I love you" in goodbye posts. That's how good this Liverpool team are. He's getting a legend sign off, and it's Dejan Lovren, who's very good on his day, but nowhere near the sort of level of that first team at current.
I think that it's a bit harsh to say Lovren because I do think he's been quite good when I've watched him, whereas I think Origi's been quite bad.
Yeah, I agree. I think Lovren is harsh. It was just slim pickings, man.
It just has to be Shaqiri.
All right, Joe feels the most strongly, so let's give him Shaqiri because, frankly, I don't actually care that much. But he's literally sat on the bench all season. I'm not, and that's not really his fault when you look at the talent around him.
80 minutes of football.
All right, mate. Right, let's move on to Man City because we're 15 minutes in and we're one team down. But Man City, at least, best player. Is there any debate here?
No.
KDB.
Yeah.
All the way down.
Yeah.
100%. What is it? 13 goals, 20 assists this season. It was ridiculous.
Yes.
Sickening.
Matched Henry's assist record. Was pretty much clearly the best player on the pitch any time I watched Man City. Worst player then. Chris Hamill. What have you got?
again, this feels reminiscent of Liverpool, where you're sort of picking on, bullying bit part players. But I've gone in my notes. I've gone John Stones or Cancelo, but Cancelo has actually been good, statistically speaking, in the limited amount of minutes he's had. So I think I might opt for John Stones. I mean, when you look at some of his defensive numbers, he's making less interceptions than in 12 starts, I think. So a decent amount of starts. Less interceptions in Garcia, Laporte, Walker, Zinchenko, Mendy, Cancelo. So less tackles than a bunch of them too. So even when he's on the pitch, like his defending isn't quite of the level of some of his peers, and he looks a little bit disenfranchised, doesn't he? It looks like he's going to be moved on, and that Pep doesn't really trust him for big games, which is a shame because he has got such high potential. But now all of a sudden his future is sort of shrouded in mystery. So yeah, I've gone for John Stones.
Yeah,
interesting.
That's
a fair shot.
I had John Stones listed down as the worst as well. Sadly, I just think that this was his season to put his stamp as the starting centre back, with Laporte missing so much, and he's just gone backwards. I think it was 1,100 minutes, like you alluded to. Then Fernandinho's played 2,000 at centre half, and I know Fernandinho's a fabulous player, but he's not an actual centre back, is he? Stones has just gone backwards this year. But I don't think that... I'm going to revise what I said. I think it was on Sunday Vibes a couple of weeks ago, but I don't think they'll sell Stones unless they sign 2 centre-backs. I can't see Pep getting rid of another centre-half just because they've not got enough without 2 coming in.
Yeah, they've been really bitten hard this season by a lack of depth there. Yeah. So you can imagine Pep being extremely cautious next season about that. I think that you're both completely fair in picking Stones. I considered him. I went for Otamendi in the end. But to be honest with you, I think that's just because when I looked at Stones' stats and when I watched him, I was like, I don't think you're actually really worse than you were last season. I think you're in a worse side. And to me, Otamendi was a couple of seasons ago a member of a Centurion centre-back, defensive line, and this season just looked like an embarrassment. I think they lost 7 of the 24 league games he played.
I saw someone on Twitter call him an Argentinian mop, and it really made me laugh. So that's what I think. What I think of when I think of Otamendi now.
When I see Otamendi, I think he looks like an Arsenal defender, like beamed into Man City, in that he's constantly on an island, constantly doing stupid shit. But yeah, I'm happy with John Stones, because also with Otamendi, he's just old.
Yeah. Like, he's had his time in the sun, hasn't he?
Exactly.
And John Stones is supposed to be experiencing or entering his peak.
Yes. So, up next, Joe.
Yeah.
Manchester United, and I know well, I actually think that there are quite a few shouts for best, but I think we're going to disagree.
There are definitely a few shouts for best. I think there are 3 outstanding candidates, in my opinion. I think the 3 outstanding candidates are probably Rashford, Martial, and Bruno Fernandes. Mm-hmm. Could easily have gone Marcus Rashford. It was very, very close to saying Marcus Rashford on this one. Just I think he's had his best season in a United shirt, and he's really been hampered, in my opinion, on this one because of the injury. Not really his fault either. The broken back, obviously, played into the ground under Solskjaer because we're trying to get Champions League football. I think Martial has had an outstanding second half of the season in particular. He's really, really improved with his back to goal. I think he's got 22 in all competitions for us this season, same as Rashford. And he's going from strength to strength, playing as the out-and-out 9. But I've gone for Bruno purely for the impact factor. I think Bruno has changed everything about Manchester United in a positive way, from leadership to his off-the-ball work to his chance creation and goal scoring. And he gets labelled as a... sort of like a penalty machine, but it's not his fault. He's got to take the penalties. Do you know what I mean? And he still would have put up decent. I think he's scored 3 penalties, right? So even in 14 games, if you were to say he would scored 5 and got 7 assists, you'd be pretty happy with that output coming first 6 months from the Portuguese league. So yeah, I've gone for Bruno Fernandes purely based on his impact for United, but it could easily have been Rashford.
Well, this is the thing. This is what I was talking about before. Like Chris's kind of thought experiment about what happens if this player comes after that player, I think is really interesting here, because look at a team like Arsenal, right? Like if Arsenal were to keep together all their attackers this summer and then were to buy like a really top class number 10 and just drop them into the team, you wouldn't be surprised if at the end of next season that top class number 10 got named Arsenal's player of the year, because they'd say, look how he's transformed this attack. And Man United's attack was really bad over the first half of the year. And what kept them in contention was that their defence was always good. Their defence was good the whole way through. And so I'm not sure I necessarily want to say this person has been their player of the year, but I do think that you've got to think about Maguire and Aaron Wan-Bissaka as strong candidates here. I think Wan-Bissaka has arguably been one of your most consistent players because Rashford obviously had that injury. Martial had a slower first half of the season and Fernandes wasn't there. But AWB, I mean, people say he needs to improve going forward, and I think that's true, but he's still got 4 assists, which isn't that bad. And bearing in mind that Shaw and Williams combined got 1 goal involvement, I think he's winning possession 6 times a game still. He's still almost impossible to get past.
Yeah.
And I think that one of the reasons that Man United were able to play what is essentially a centre-forward on the right wing in Mason Greenwood in the back half of the season, and why they were able to play Pogba and Fernandes in midfield at the same time, and why their attack was able to run in kind of like this all guns blazing way, was because they knew that at the back they had solidity. And I think that Wan-Bissaka has been a really important part of that. So I just wanted to give him a kind of shout out for that reason.
Yeah, he's definitely, don't get me wrong, he's had a great first season at Manchester United. But there are definitely areas he needs to improve on. And I know you talked about 4 assists there. The issue that Aaron Wan-Bissaka has isn't necessarily, I think, his issue effectively is that teams have now identified that he's a really poor passer of the ball. So what they do is they effectively create a triangle, a sort of a low block triangle that allows no ball progression to Bruno or Pogba, and all they do is funnel it wide to Wan-Bissaka. And when Wan-Bissaka's on the ball, he just gives it away constantly and consistently in attacking positions. So I think there's big areas of improvement for him to be made, but don't get me wrong, he's had a good first season at Manchester United. For Maguire, yeah,
Maguire's difficult
because
Maguire does do some embarrassing
effectively that, and the fees just hampers him, doesn't it? It does hamper him. If there's £80 million, you're expecting that level of consistency at centre half. And I think he's had a good season. He's the first Man United player since Gary Pallister to play every minute of every Premier League game. So the poor bloke needs a rest. But yeah, I kind of half agree. I just think that they haven't been outstanding.
Okay, fair enough. Chris, do you have a way of settling this argument?
My immediate thinking was what has been the most consistent Champions League component of their side, and that was the defence. But then I couldn't really pick out any one player from their defence in particular. Like, I think they've been very good as a unit, and I think the latter half of the season, Nemanja Matic has been awesome, and Matic has enabled Bruno Fernandes to have this roaming role, right, where he can do damage in the final third of the pitch with his wonderful progressive passing and chance creation. But across the course of the season, I think Marcus Rashford has to get it for me. So not really settling any arguments, but I think
I'd be happy to say
he's
Rashford.
Been the most
I would
consistent.
be happy saying Rashford.
I'd definitely be happy saying Rashford.
Cool. Let's go for Rashford then.
Surely.
Keep my answer short and sweet, yeah.
Yeah.
Worst, Jesse Lingard. Okay. 900 minutes,
I'll disagree,
1 goal.
but-
Do you know how old Jesse Lingard is this year?
28, isn't he? 27?
He's 28 this year. What has happened?
Yeah.
Yeah. You go, Hamill, because I spoke for a long time.
Yeah, I mean, you've probably got much more to say on him. But like 3/4 of the way through the season, he was getting dogs abuse, right? And he's obviously been through some stuff off the pitch, which has affected his performances on it. So for me, he gets that leeway. And he seems to be a victim of being given a £100,000 a week contract by his billionaire club. Like, I find it, like, his performances deserve criticism, but I find the personal abuse he's taken obviously extremely distasteful, disproportionate to what's happened on the pitch. And this wage thing that's levelled against him, like, he's a local boy done good. Like, it's Manchester United's fault for overpaying for what contribution he makes on the pitch. It was a little bit like the Shaqiri thing with me, as in, like, I just didn't register him as really a functioning member of the team across the whole course of the season. But I'm going to be of no further assistance in this, because for my worst answer, I just wrote Joe Tomlinson down on my piece of paper, like
Cool.
just that he would do it. So there we go.
All right, so for my worst then, yeah, I can see why you would have Jesse Lingard up there. There's definitely arguments. I think that was his first goal involvement of the season, wasn't it, yesterday? But like Chris said, he's obviously been battling some stuff off the field, so I kind of just chose to leave him alone for this one. And yeah, I think it's been Andreas Pereira. I think Andreas Pereira is the hallmark of why Manchester United needs so much improvement across the board in terms of depth. He's played 36 games this season, Andreas Pereira. 36 games. And he's just not good enough to be playing 36 games. Just way, way below par. The amount of times I've had to watch him playing in that sort of Bruno role, pre-Bruno's arrival, is just shocking. So, yeah, I will say Andreas Pereira. I just don't think he's good enough for Manchester United. He'll probably be let go this summer if we can find the right suitor, as will Jesse Lingard. But I just think 36 appearances shows that Manchester United need depth across the board.
Woof.
Yeah, that is an awful lot of football for such a poor player. Right, well, just before we get into our next section then, we'd like to bring you a word from our sponsors, who this week are Harry's. You know them by now. We've spoken about them before. And thanks to Harry's, you can claim a trial shaving set for just £3.95. That's a set that includes a razor handle, a 5-blade cartridge, foaming shave gel, and a travel blade cover by going to harrys.com/extra. Now, one of the things that we really like about Harry's is that, in a way, I think that they're kind of doing something similar to what I felt we were doing at the beginning, which is when you read the story of how Harry's started, they felt that all of the razors that you could get on the high street were overpriced, were not good enough for what they were, and weren't really what people wanted. They were just kind of one-upping themselves by adding more blades or doing whatever, and it didn't really make sense. And I kind of feel like that's how we were at the beginning. Like, when we were first kind of starting as a 3 at Football Daily, I felt like what we really talked about a lot was the stuff that we felt was underrepresented in football punditry, and how annoying it was that there was this kind of closed club of people who'd just always done things the same way, right?
Are we ironically saying that in this situation is...
Ooh. I mean, we're not allowed to mention other razors by name.
Well, that's gonna get bleeped then, isn't it? Okay.
Yeah, we'll bleep both parts of that.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, our kind of starting point was that fans are actually smarter than they deserve credit for, right? And want to know more about the granular side of the game than listening to a generic commentator whose name I cannot mention sort of describe what's happening in front of you. So I have actually, you can't see me because I'm not on a video call at the moment, but I'm actually growing a mustache at the moment, Pat.
Are you
so
ready?
If you could send me a sample, that would be grand.
Well, this is the thing. Like, it actually does require work to grow a beard or a moustache or whatever. Like, sorry, Joe, you might have to sit this out a little bit.
True, but, yeah, definitely, mate. I'm staying quiet.
But you know when you shave and it kind of like it hurts. It's really rough on your skin. Like, you end up with cuts. Or even if you're trying to do a good job, I've found that you don't get any of that with Harry's because the foaming shave gel is really, really good. The blades are incredibly sharp, but not too aggressive. You know, you don't feel like you're like scraping your face down with sandpaper. And so I always feel afterwards like my skin is very smooth and that I've got a really precise shave, which is basically all I want. I just want to not bleed and look good. I don't think that's too much to ask.
Have you got your buttons undone on this as well? Because you've been getting a lot of good press for how much chest hair you've been showing.
Have I? Where have I been getting this good press?
I think it might have been in the comments on Sunday Vibes, mate.
Oh, Jesus Christ. Yeah, if you want to see more of that, then head over to my OnlyFans and just like hit up the subscription page. But before you do that, make sure you go to harrys.com/extra to claim your trial set for £3.95. That's harrys.com/extra for a razor handle, 5-blade cartridge, foaming shave gel, and a travel blade cover. There'll be a link in the description below as well.
First time ever there's been a segue from OnlyFans to Harry's razors.
I mean, I find that shocking that we haven't talked about OnlyFans basically every week during lockdown. But let's move on to the next section. Because next up we've got Chelsea. Chris, I want to know who your best player of the season is for Chelsea. And I actually thought of all the teams we looked at, I found Chelsea probably the easiest to do.
Interesting, because I actually found it it was quite competitive between 2 or 3 players. That's not the case for worst. I think we all know who that is. There's only one player who's made the most tackles, the most interceptions, the most blocks, who is second for assists, clearances, recoveries, aerial duels, and third for chances created. That's how numbers work. Only one player can be those things. And that's Cesar Azpilicueta. An unspectacular season, but extremely solid in a really transitional period for Chelsea.
But part of one of the worst defences the top 6 has ever seen.
Mate, they only concede like 8.5 shots a game. Is it his fault that Kepa has no wrists?
But also the shots they concede are like
a yard
2 yards out.
Oh, come on. I mean, I think that's a hard accusation to level against Azpilicueta, who's been forced to play on the wrong side on occasion, and who's watched the centre halves partnerships be switched out sort of, pretty, not judiciously, because that means you're doing it well, doesn't it? But pretty regularly.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I agree with you that I think he's probably been better than people think, but I do think he's noticeably slowed down, and the defence has not been good.
They concede the same amount of goals as Brighton. I just don't think you can have a defender in their best player when Kovacic and Pulisic are in the contention here. For me, the best player at Chelsea has been Kovacic. I think he's driven the entire midfield forward in a season where they've been without N'Golo Kante for the majority of it. And to be honest with you, Jorginho's been running around like he doesn't know where he is. So I think, for me, it's just obviously Mateo Kovacic. If the season went on for another 5 months, I think it would have been Pulisic. Just been sensational since the lockdown and maybe a little bit before that. But across the course of the campaign, for me, it's Kovacic.
Yeah, I had Pulisic on my honourable mention list as well, but for me, it is Kovacic. And as Chris said, Kepa is
obviously the worst.
Kepa's like a guy they've pulled out of the crowd to go in goal, but they've had to pay 70 mil to do so. Like he is so the worst keeper in the league this season, I think, with the exception of that pub guy who played in goal for West Ham for about 20 minutes.
Roberto,
and it's not just
17 goals.
This isn't just like confirmation bias. Like his numbers are so bad. He's in like a group of his own.
Yeah, did you see that chart that George posted in the WhatsApp today?
Yeah, there's like a quadrant where like all the keepers are, and then there's like Kepa in the bottom left where he can see he faces no shots on target but concedes hundreds of goals.
It's like one of those graphs you see for Messi where he's like in a land of his own but reversed.
He's
where
the reverse
just down
Messi
at the bottom corner
of goalkeepers. Yeah, I mean Jordan Pickford isn't far behind. I think he sort of chucked it at Everton a while ago, but disagreements with Ancelotti rife. You know what? I'm happy to go Kovacic best. It feels like a vindication of 2 years of saying he's a great player. I remember when we picked him out in Sunday Vibes a long time ago, didn't we? And Kepa is worst.
Yeah, we've had a good season for being proven right on guys. We've had Kovacic, and it looks like, and certainly I'd say over the last few weeks of the season, Ceballos as well have kind of
less said about Tango and Ndombele, the better.
Yeah, the poor guy.
Yeah. Additional circumstances there. Though.
Although we may come on to him there.
I'm hoping he'll go somewhere else this summer and be amazing. But Leicester City up next. Joe, where can we look for best beyond Jamie Vardy?
Yeah, I've put Jamie Vardy down. I think, I actually think James Maddison, his importance has been so highlighted with his injury. So if he'd have been able to play the course of the season, he'd have been in contention, but his numbers aren't amazing, but it's just his importance in that team. Yeah. You can see it's been ripped open. Same with Ricardo Pereira. If he'd have played a full season, probably in with contention. But it has to be Jamie Vardy, doesn't it? Just 23 and 34, but he outperforms expected goals every season. Outperformed it by 5 this season, 2 last season. Then it was 5 before that. So yeah, he's just a finishing freak, isn't it?
Well, I think he's also just so often able to get that extra yard ahead of the defender, which really does increase the quality of a chance, and it's quite hard for XG to tell that. But I was looking at also the minutes he's played. This is the 3rd time in the last 5 years he's played over 3,000 league minutes, and the other 2 seasons he played 2,700 and 2,800, and he's 33.
Class.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
That's
amazing from him. But I think you also do have to think about Pereira and Ndidi. And Ndidi played a lot, and so did Maddison.
Yeah,
but Maddison,
injuries.
fewer goal involvements than Iosi Perez.
Although, can I just say, I saw Doogie
bad.
Critchley today do his team of the season on Twitter,
Jesus.
and he had
did.
Johnny Evans at centre back in his Premier League team of the year alongside Van Dijk. So I did want to get your thoughts on that, Hamster, whether or not you'd have Johnny Evans as a potential burst.
I mean, he's been absolutely superb. And you look at Leicester's back 4 or 5, depending on what system they play at the end of the season, and a lot of the other components are either young kids or players that really shouldn't be anywhere near a squad that's competing for Europa League, Champions League football. At one point, Leicester lined up in a back 5 of Christian Fuchs on the left, and then it was Bennett, Morgan, Evans, and James Justin on the right. And James Justin is a shout for sort of most improved within the Leicester ranks, and took on the unenviable task of trying to replicate Ricardo Pereira's role down that right hand side. But you can't tell me that teams in the Championship don't have a better back line than that, particularly like the top 4 or 5. It was astounding, really, and he managed to hold it together until the dying embers of the season. Johnny Evans would be on my shortlist for sure. Premier League team of the season, centre halves, but yeah, I'm not really thought about from a league-wide position. But I Evans was in my top 3. I had Vardy and Ndidi and Evans. I think the talk of Maddison is quite short because his goal contributions are sort of dried up before he got injured. Although I have said time and time again he makes other players a lot better.
Yes.
Yeah. So I'm gonna go with you on Vardy.
Who's your worst, Chris?
My worst, who did I have? Oh, I've in my notes I've got 9 to. I'm quoting this as well. 9 to 10 players either past it or too young to even take into consideration. So that's how much sort of work I think this Leicester squad needs. And it's not a huge squad either, which leaves you with very few options. Like it actually leaves you looking at players they bought in the summer, which isn't entirely fair because they have to adjust to the squad, don't they? Displace someone and sort of adapt to a new culture all at the same time. So you kind of think, it's not that they get a free pass in the first year, but you kind of think we'll see your best football in the second year. But saying
I've gone for one of those boys, though. I've got one of those boys.
I've got Pratt down, and I've got honourable mentions for Perez, minus that performance against Southampton.
Wow. I think, I've got Dennis Pratt down. 22 million euros it was, I think, in the end.
An attacking midfielder that's contributed to 3 goals and assists. It's not really.
Well, to be honest with you though, like I get he's been brought in as this creator, but I was looking at his stats today. Across the course of his career, he's never breached more than 0.2 expected assists per 90, and he's never breached more than 0.1 expected goals per 90. So I wonder whether the kind of thought of him as a creator is just nowhere near to be seen, and whether or not he will actually have a career at Leicester, or whether he might well just be moved on and seen as we can make a little bit of money back immediately.
We all know Leicester bought him because Arsenal sniffed about, and then they just thought, right, that'll do, and that is what happened.
Yeah, well, I think the combination of the price tag here and just like the lack of, he just doesn't do anything. Like he doesn't even get on the. I was literally looking at his numbers and like even for passes per game, he makes like 15 passes fewer than anybody else in the midfield. And so I was like, what is this guy here for? He's just a man. He's just like, so you don't have to play 10 men. So
he's actually not a bad footballer. He was an odd.
He was an odd, but he's not a good one.
Yeah,
and with Maddison out for such a prolonged period of time, that was his chance to step into an attacking midfield role, and it's just not happened.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah, he's a guy who, like, if he was in your squad, he's a little bit like Jordan Pickford, right? If Jordan Pickford had come through the Everton Academy and not cost them a penny, no one would have an issue with him. In the same way that if Dennis Pratt was just like a guy who'd been at Leicester for 10 years, no one would care. But because they spent nearly £20 million on him, you've got to look at him in the context of that, and it's not been good enough.
Yeah, I'm happy to go with Pratt.
Okay, so let's go on to Arsenal.
You said top 6?
Yeah, I know.
Yeah,
but
I top 6. No, I've got a couple Arsenal players in.
Shove Arsenal in. Put them in anyway. Oh, God.
All right, come on with the Arsenal then.
Well, Arsenal's best player, I think we'd all agree, is Aubameyang, though I think Leno would have had a shout if he'd seen out the whole season.
Definitely.
Honourable mention maybe for Saka, but, it's more that he's promising than he's been like a star.
Yeah.
Worst player.
Can I just say as well, I think Bernd Leno, pre the injury, was in with a shout as the best goalkeeper this season. I know that like Nick Pope put up big clean sheet numbers and obviously Edison and Alisson, but because he faces so many more shots than they do, I just think he was an argument for the goalkeeper of the season, Leno, pre the injury.
Yeah, and in a way, he's also suffered from the fact that Martinez has come in and been really good.
Yeah.
If Martinez had come in and been like an embarrassment, then I think probably there'd have been a much bigger surge of support.
How good is he, by the way, Emi Martinez?
Unreal,
mate.
He looks great. Get
him in England,
and it's nice
Cap.
to see. Well, he's been here 10 years now.
Yeah,
so
he is eligible. He is eligible because he's never been capped by Argentina.
Jesus. Worst player for Arsenal this season. I think there are contenders. But I actually think it's extremely hard not to say it's Ozil.
Oh, okay. So then, if that's the argument, how many minutes has he put up? Can't be more than 500.
1,400.
Oh my god,
1,400 minutes.
1,400.
Yeah, but I mean, like, look, don't get me wrong. A lot of that was like, Ljungberg came in and played him every minute. Arteta played him every minute for about 5 or 6 games. He's got 3 goal involvements. I mean, the defenders are bad, and the system was bad, and Emery was bad, and Ljungberg was bad. Ozil has just not done his job. I tell you what else. This is very harsh because he's extremely young, but I also do not rate Joe Willock at all. Like, I think he's fine. I think he might turn into something useful, but of all the youngsters at Arsenal this season, it really annoys me when people are like, Arsenal's youngsters look really promising. Nketiah, Saka, Martinelli, Willock, and I think, okay, we can't pretend that Willock is in the same category as Saka or Martinelli, in my view. But
I do agree with you in terms of Ozil being that he eats up such big wages, but I think it's been Sead Kolasinac.
Really?
In terms of your worst play, every game I watch him, he's an absolute calamity.
He's in my top 3. He's in my top 3, but I've also got Socrates in there, maybe.
The thing is, 20 starts in the Prem. That's unfathomable. I know that it's partly down to Tierney being injured and stuff, and he's having to play 3 at the back, but it boggles the mind how Sead Kolasinac's just starting 20 games for Arsenal.
I think he's a fair shout. Yeah, like I say, he's in my top 3. Chris, what do you think?
I actually did top 6. I wasn't even trying to banter you, so I've not really thought that much about Arsenal. But
to be fair, I didn't say top 6. I said the big 6 plus Leicester.
Okay, well,
so
is a subliminal thing from me. Subliminal, subconscious. I think I'll probably go with Ozil. Show some love for my fellow big Swede, Sead Kolasinac. Do you know what I was thinking through that whole thing? That if Kolasinac died in the same way as the dinosaurs and you were dusting off his skull, would you think that was a human being or a dinosaur? That's genuinely what I was thinking throughout that whole thing. Like, his head is so big that if you discovered his skull, like, would you think it was some sort of superhuman? No, I've got a massive head as well. I mean, I've got a lot of time.
A bit of amateur phrenology from Chris Howell.
Yeah, I've got a lot of time for
Always
it.
good to have.
But yeah, Mesut Ozil.
I mean, to be honest, you could just put anyone. You put Unai Emery in. Like, who gives a? It's been a
it probably is Unai Emery. I'm not going to lie, it is Unai, isn't it? The worst.
Isn't it the first time in 25 years you finished outside the top 7? It's like young fans of like this. This is they only know suffering.
Still win the cup though,
mate. Arsenal and Spurs should have. Arsenal and Spurs should have finished outside the top 10. Like, we've not even been good enough to deserve 8th spot this season. We've been so bad. It's been genuinely diabolical. On the other hand, I do think that probably, like, you could shove 2 or 3 players in and see a massive improvement.
You're heading in the right direction without like that is without a shadow of a doubt. And Kieran Tierney, you know, what a man. So there we go.
I love that boy. Anyway, let's get on to the other embarrassing team from North London before we close this out. Tottenham Hotspur. Who's your best, Chris?
I've gone Giovanni Lo Celso.
Whoa,
Maybe to appease my ego, because Ndombele, who we said was like one of the best signings of the season, is also down as my worst. But like we said, that's nuanced. A lot of things to consider there. A lot of variables. But I've gone Giovanni Lo Celso. I know he wasn't really a staple at the start of the season, and went through a couple of injuries. Wasn't particularly favoured when Jose first took over, or at the end of Pochettino's sort of reign. But finished the season really strong, and I think he's shown what a big player he's going to be for Tottenham. Can play in a number of positions. Really drives them up the pitch. Very sort of like tactically versatile, and I think someone that Mourinho is going to build an affinity with or towards, because like he's willing to do that dog work as well, isn't he? Like his pressure. I've not had a look at like his pressures or his recoveries, but he's a very talented footballer who is also willing to do all that. Although I've got to say, I didn't pay this a lot of consideration. I didn't give Spurs a lot of respect in my preparation. I literally left them until last and then just threw 2 names down. So very amenable to changing this one, to be honest, gents.
Okay, Joe, who have you got?
I mean, I think Lo Celso is pretty close. And I think I said we need to talk that Lo Celso... I've gone for Son, though. I've fallen on the Son side of it. I think those are the 2 outstanding candidates. But was it 28, 29 goal involvements this season for Tottenham? In a campaign that's been really hit and miss for the club. 11 goals in the Prem, 10 assists in the Prem. Just really solid numbers yet again. And I think without him, they would have just been a disaster given Harry Kane's injury record. So I've gone Heung-min Son, but I can see the argument for Lo Celso as well.
Well, yeah, Son actually played fewer minutes than Kane, but got 1 more goal involvement, despite the fact Kane obviously got a couple of penalties too. Has just been amazing this season. Can you name all the players in the Premier League to have got into double figures for goals and assists this season? Do you know how many there are and who they are?
David Silva, Kevin De Bruyne.
No.
Oh, David Silva.
Not David Silva.
David Silva didn't get the goals, did he? Got the assists.
Probably just Kevin De Bruyne, Heung-min Son, and then maybe Mo Salah didn't get the assist, did he?
Sadio Mane.
He did.
Sadio Mane.
He did. He did. It's Kevin De Bruyne, Salah, and Heung-min Son.
Oh, right. Interesting.
Close.
Pretty special company to be in, I think.
Yeah.
Worst, Chris has already tipped his hand to Tanguy Ndombele, though has also been a little bit apologetic, I guess.
Big time.
Because, it has been difficult. He has been in and out of the side, and he did have some really good performances early in the season. But, Joe, do you have any disagreement here? Because I've got down Moussa Sissoko and Eric Dyer.
Yeah, I've got a bit of disagreement. I think Serge Aurier potentially, although I do think he's had a little bit of a resurgence under Jose Mourinho.
Agreed.
Was that pun intentional, resurgence?
I don't know what the pun is.
Because his first name's Serge.
Oh no, it wasn't. But I also think very hard to argue against Jan Vertonghen. To be honest with you, 1,700 Premier League minutes this season. By far his worst season in the Premier League. And I actually think Eric Dyer's looked like a better defender under Jose Mourinho than him. And that says a lot.
Ooh, God, I think Jan Vertonghen's harsh, man.
Yeah, he's had to play left back. He's played in a terrible team. He's old as the hills.
But I think people forget just how bad he was under Poch at the start of the season. It was unbelievable.
That is true. I mean, I actually ended up looking this morning at Understat's expected points table, and they had Spurs. Arsenal were like 9th, and I was pretty miserable about that. And then I saw Spurs were like 4 places lower, which was pretty staggering to me.
Yeah. There's also, I think Harry Winks hasn't had his best season in a Tottenham shirt.
No one's expecting, like, Harry Winks keeps clocking up minutes without anyone like really thinking he's going to be a long-term solution, right?
Yeah. I mean, if we're talking like if I wanted to say disappointing, I probably wouldn't name any of the players you've named. I'd probably say Ryan Sessegnon almost, other than Tanguy and Ndombele, because I feel gutted for him. What did he cost him? 35 mil, and he's played about 100 minutes of football in all comps, isn't he?
I think it was more than that. At least wasn't it closer to like 50?
No.
I think he was 30 to 35. But I think he's played.
I don't even know if it was that much.
I think he's played 4 games.
What, friend Ndombele?
No, for
No,
Ryan
no,
Sessegnon.
for Sessegnon.
Oh, sorry.
So yeah, I think Ryan Sessegnon potentially most disappointing alongside Tango.
Yeah, it's been a difficult season for them. But I mean, at least with Sessegnon, Lo Celso, and Ndombele, if they keep him, like you can. I'm a little bit more positive about Spurs' future, except for the fact that they're managed by Mourinho. I think that they're players. They've got some really interesting talent.
Because he has taken them from 14th to 6th, though.
Yes, but also sort of not really. Like, I mean, he has been there while that's happened, but I'm not sure I'd give him credit for it. The defense at first had I remember they had a really solid bounce back with the defense, and then since the restart, I've got to say, I would be delighted if it wasn't Spurs, but Harry Kane looks fully fit again for the first time in 3 years.
Yeah,
Harry Kane has looked,
doesn't he?
He's looked amazing, and finally I was like, oh, Harry Kane's fit again. Like, he's needed 4 months
I think
off.
I've only watched 2 full 90s of Spurs since the break. And against Leicester, they were absolutely superb. Like, their game management, like it was one of the most comprehensive Mourinho performances against a side competing for the top 6 that I'd seen in some time. But I don't know if the players will necessarily enjoy playing like that. Like if the playing squad is simpatico with the manager and how he's going to play. But yeah, I think disappointing obviously has a broad meaning. But I'd go for Ndombele. Yeah.
I think the thing with Kane is it's not even just 4 months, is it? Because the injury happened right. I think was it on New Year's Day the injury happened maybe, or just after. He's actually had 7 months worth of rest basically, or 6 months worth of rest, and he's now going to have another 6 weeks of rest because of course Tottenham aren't playing in any competition, so he could be tots next season. I think Harry Kane for Golden Boot next season is a good bet.
Well, we'll see. I'm not quite sure what the situation is with qualifying rounds for the Europa League or anything but yeah, hopefully he'll go into next season rested and looking like this, because this just reminded me of 2017 Harry Kane, when we were saying this is one of the best strikers in the world.
Yeah.
Oh God, I'm really annoyed. The good thing is Mourinho is there, and Mourinho is he's there for a bad time, not a long time.
But Mourinho will make everything go through Harry Kane. Everything will go through Harry Kane, so he will score a lot of goals.
But the thing is about Mourinho, he used to say, you know what, when we go away to Manchester City, we are going to play really dogged, depressing football. But the rest of the time, we're going to absolutely batter teams. I mean, this was a guy who did pair Matic and Fabregas in central midfield and played Ivanovic basically as a right winger from right back. But now he's no, Newcastle, Bournemouth, those are the games that we're going to muddy up. We can't afford to go out there and try and play football against them. And that, to me, is not going to go down well for very long at Spurs.
Yeah, interesting.
Well, I'm pretty happy with all our shouts there, I've got to say. Thank you very much for joining me this week, guys. Is there anything that you'd like to point to on any of our channels after this?
When does this go out? Wednesday?
Yep.
Yeah, so we have Transfer Talk live on Football Daily and a top 10 going out on Euro Football Daily. So make sure you check them out. And if you're not subscribed to this channel and you're just casually dropping by without clicking that subscribe button, then sort it out.
Yeah, agreed.
Exactly,
agreed. Just go and subscribe to this channel. Click the subscribe button below now. Like the video and share it with all your friends.
By the way, for people listening to this as a podcast, they mean the Football Daily Podcast YouTube channel. Please make sure that you do go and subscribe to it, and keep subscribed to us on whichever podcast app you use. If you'd like to claim your trial set from Harry's, go to harrys.com/extra, and we'll see you next time for another episode of Extra Time. Thanks very much for watching or listening. Bye.
Bye.